Can't let you in. Access to the lab is strictly forbidden without a Lee Gang access pass.
No problem. Here it is.
The year is 2027. Adam Jensen, a security chief turned cybernetic enforcer, staggers through the ruins of Panchaea, a sinking monument to humanity's hubris. His augmented limbs whir with mechanical precision, but his voice rasps with exhaustion. I never asked for this. This line, now etched into gaming history, encapsulates the paradox of Deus Ex Human Revolution. Developed by Eidos Montreal, a studio at the time untested in the legacy of the seminal Deus Ex series, the game sought to resurrect a dormant franchise for a new era. It succeeded spectacularly, with its gilded cyberpunk aesthetic, morally complex storytelling, and reimagined gameplay. Human Revolution was hailed as a masterpiece, a bridge between the experimental 2000s and the cinematic 2010s. Yet much like Icarus ascending on waxen wings, its brilliance cast too vast a shadow. The sequel, Mankind Divided, strained under the weight of expectation, buckling under corporate mandates and differing visions for the project. Human Revolution soared too close to the sun, but Mankind Divided was where the series' wings melted. When Eidos Montreal began development of Human Revolution in 2007, the stakes were immense. The original Deus Ex, released in 2000 by Ion Storm, had redefined player agency in gaming. Its labyrinthian narrative, blending Cold War paranoia, Y2K-era technophobia, and player-driven conspiracies, earned a cult following, and rightfully so. Critics praised its unprecedented level of freedom, and it sold over 1 million copies by 2002. A very significant figure for a niche title like that at the time. However, its sequel, Deus Ex Invisible War, struggled to recapture that magic. By the late 2000s, the franchise was dormant, a relic of a bygone era. Eidos Montreal, a newly formed studio in Quebec, faced skepticism. How could a team of newcomers modernize a series synonymous with complexity and player agency above all? The studio's leadership were industry veterans, but had never tackled a project of this scope. In a 2010 interview with Game Informer, they outlined their vision, stating, "We wanted to honor the original's DNA, player choice, systemic design, but make it accessible. The world had changed. Games had changed." Their solution was a prequel, set in 2027, decades before the original Deus Ex. This allowed them to explore the origins of human augmentation, a cornerstone of the series' lore, while sidestepping the narrative baggage of prior sequels. The studio's gamble hinged on balancing the nostalgia of existing fans while still innovating enough to appeal to people who may have never experienced the world of Deus Ex before. Early marketing for Human Revolution leaned heavily on its cyberpunk aesthetic and moral ambiguity. Gameplay demos often showcased Adam in a myriad of different situations, from using a Typhoon explosive system to clear a room of enemies, or in a stealth sequence in a rain-soaked Detroit alley. The tagline, "Your choices matter," dominated promotional material, promising a return to the original's branching gameplay and narrative structure. Trailers juxtaposed sleek augmentations with dystopian imagery. Golden filters, monolithic skyscrapers, and crowds of protesters in the shadows below them. Yet, fans noticed red flags. Pre-release footage downplayed the original's immersive sim mechanics, focusing instead on cover-based shooting, a trend popularized in the mid to late 2000s. Forums buzzed with concerns about the oversimplification of previously PC-centric design principles in favor of a wider audience of console players. But the studio addressed these fears in a 2011 interview with Eurogamer, stating, "Accessibility isn't dumbing down, we're refining systems, not removing them. The vents, the hacking, they're still there, but now they're intuitive." And just like in the world of Deus Ex, there are a ton of hackers out in the real world right this very moment too. That's where the sponsor of today's video, Surfshark VPN, can help you. Public Wi-Fi is a hacker's playground. Have you ever logged into your bank account or checked your email on coffee shop Wi-Fi? Bad news. that free hotspot isn't just free for you, it's free for hackers too. They can easily intercept your data, steal your passwords, or even hijack your accounts, all without you ever knowing. That's exactly why you need Surfshark VPN. It encrypts your internet traffic so no one, not hackers, not your internet provider, no one can see what you're doing. It's like having an invisible force field around your online activity. But security means nothing if your VPN keeps logs, right? Unlike some VPNs that track and store your data, Surfshark follows a strict no logs policy. That means they don't keep records of your browsing history, personal info, or anything you do online. No logs, no trace, no worries. But what if your personal data has already been exposed? Well, they also offer Surfshark Alert. It monitors the web for any data breaches that might involve your email, passwords, or financial info. And if it finds anything, you get an instant alert so you can take action before it's too late. On top of all of that, Surfshark includes a 30-day money-back guarantee. And if you use my link in the description and pinned comment, surfshark.com/shycorn, you can get 4 extra months for free. Head down there now and sign up for Surfshark VPN today. Now, back to the video. Human Revolution sold over 2.1 million copies in its first year, per Square Enix's 2012 annual report, and earned an 89 out of 100 on Metacritic. But beneath the acclaim lay several cracks in its foundation that we'll cover shortly. Human Revolution's narrative mirrors its own development. Adam Jensen, forcibly augmented after a near-fatal attack, becomes a pawn in a corporate conspiracy. His journey from disillusioned security chief to unknowing revolutionary parallels Eidos Montreal's struggle to balance innovation with tradition. The game's first true mission, Seraph Manufacturing Plant, sets this tone. Jensen, investigating an attack on the plant, navigates this occupied factory filled with brutal enemies and mangled robots. The environmental storytelling here is on point. Emails on discarded computers exposing unsafe labor practices at Seraph Industries. Hidden vents rewarding exploration with both alternate routes for stealth players and unlocking new dialogue with some of the cast. This layering of narrative and gameplay became the studio's signature. Yet as development progressed, their ambition outpaced execution. And as we'll touch on more later, the decision to outsource some of the work to Grip Entertainment was not without compromises. The Icarus landing system, one of Human Revolution's most visually striking augmentations, serves as a microcosm of the game's design philosophy. Ambitious, symbolic, and occasionally impractical, this upgrade allows Adam to survive fatal falls by deploying a kinetic dampener, slowing his descent with a burst of energy. Its name is a direct nod to the Greek myth. In practice, the augmentation's utility varies wildly. During some very specific missions with scripted moments of verticality, or when exploring the Hengsha hub world especially, the Icarus landing system shines. Players can leap from rooftops, bypassing layers of security, and land silently in a crouch, ready to neutralize guards. This mechanic, like the others, could have had the capacity to reward creativity, turning the environment into a playground for emergent strategies. However, outside those scripted sequences, the upgrade's practicality diminishes severely. In the Detroit hub, for example, level design prioritizes horizontal exploration, so opportunities for dramatic plunges are scarce. The majority of the augmentations are useful regardless of your playstyle, but for the Icarus landing system, among a few others, players would often invest praxis points into the upgrade only to find it completely underutilized. This tug-of-war between spectacle and functionality is a direct result of Human Revolution's broader struggle to honor its predecessor's legacy while still appealing to modern audiences. The Icarus landing system, much like the game itself, is a bold idea that soars in moments of inspiration, but falters under the weight of its own ambition. Human Revolution's boss fights remain its most polarizing element, starkly contradicting the game's promise of player agency. A clash that begins with Barrett, a hulking monster of a man encountered early in the game, deep underground in a FEMA facility. Players who invested in non-lethal augments or weapons like the stun gun or cloaking find themselves trapped in a sterile, enclosed arena with no vents, terminals, or alternate routes. Barrett's fight demands brute force combat, forcing players to rely on weapons they may have ignored, like the combat rifle or grenade launcher. It was an incredibly abrupt shift, one that understandably alienated stealth purists. The problem stemmed from the aforementioned outsourcing. Eidos Montreal, stretched thin perfecting hubs and story missions, delegated boss fight design to Grip Entertainment. The result was a series of combat-centric encounters completely at odds with the game's DNA. The boss battle against Yelena Fedorova, a mercenary augmented with cloaking tech, further highlights this disconnect. Players expecting this to be a stealth battle of sorts, with the two of you sneaking around the arena, using your cloaking augments and being able to take her out non-lethally, would be sorely disappointed. Rather, it turns into a panicked cacophony of sights and sounds as the flash of your muzzle fills the screen, and the EMP grenades you're spamming can be heard going off in quick succession in the background. Just hoping that any one of the buttons you're pressing results in a projectile connecting with her. The backlash was swift, but the developers didn't take this lying down, and I have to commend them for that. In direct response, the 2013 Director's Cut retrofitted boss arenas with vents, turret controls, and non-lethal options. While these fixes alleviated some frustration, they still couldn't completely erase the original's misstep. This incident should have been a cautionary tale about not outsourcing critical design elements, that developers should be afforded more time and money to work on their projects instead of rushing a game out the door to meet an arbitrary deadline set in place by shareholders. It wasn't, but we're not at that point in the video yet. Where Human Revolution stumbles in boss fights, it soars in side quests. Self-contained missions that harken back to the storytelling of titles from the previous generation. One standout being a mission where you start hunting down someone for stealing neuropazine, a drug that augmented people require for their body not to reject their augmentations. At first it seems like an open and shut case, but the deeper you dig, you find out that the people responsible for the theft were only stealing the drug in order to give it to people who couldn't afford it. People who may not have had a choice in getting augmented in the first place. People who didn't ask for this, as Adam can so closely relate to. Missions like these will pop up randomly throughout your time in Human Revolution, being added to your log as you interact with people in the hub worlds, by picking certain dialogue choices during main missions, or via phone call as you're out and about. And almost all of them have some sort of morally gray twist, but never directly moralizing to the player themselves. You get to make whatever choice you want, play however you want to play. There's no morality meter teetering back and forth on the screen as you hover over each option. No more points awarded for being good rather than being bad. Unlike Mankind Divided, which often feels the need to discuss the choices you just made right after you make them, Human Revolution does the most humanizing thing it could possibly do in a story about transhumanism, by letting you make these decisions and forcing you to come to your own conclusion about what you've done. It lets you sit with your own actions. This further extends to the moment-to-moment gameplay itself by way of the Pacifist achievement, awarded for completing the game without killing non-boss enemies. This became kind of a cult phenomenon, showcasing Human Revolution's emergent design in action, with players devising ingenious strategies to circumvent combat with all the tools at their disposal. Gas grenades, stun grenades, sleep darts, environmental hazards, your cloaking augment, hacking abilities, and much more. There's never a shortage of ways to non-lethally maneuver your way through levels. This flexibility contrasted sharply with Mankind Divided, which feels far more linear even when it does decide to present you with choices. I mean, sure, there are still choices, but the game is showing them directly to me instead of letting me explore all of my options and discovering things for myself. And therein lies the problem. But back to Human Revolution. Human Revolution's gameplay is a tapestry of triumphs and missteps. Its hubs, side quests, and augmentation systems arguably redefined immersive sims for the modern age, while its boss battles and the, albeit few, undercooked mechanics serve to show that perhaps Deus Ex was flying too close to the sun. The game's director's cut, though imperfect, stands as a testament to Eidos Montreal's willingness to learn from their failures. A trait sadly not showcased in Mankind Divided's rushed development. Adam Jensen's journey in Human Revolution is character development perfected, reflecting the game's central themes of transformation and hubris. Initially introduced as this hardened security chief for Seraph Industries, Jensen's disdain for augmentation is evident from the outset. In the opening scenes, his skepticism manifests in this terse dialogue. Augmentations are a shortcut, they make people lazy. This resistance is shattered when a brutal attack leaves him near dead, forcing Seraph scientists to rebuild him with experimental cybernetics. His evolution from a simple corporate pawn to a disillusioned half-man, half-machine hybrid with the literal weight of the world on his shoulders unfolds across cities, from continent to continent, and all the way to the Arctic Ocean. Your choices in Detroit, in Hengsha, in manufacturing plants, and in skyscrapers that breach into different layers of a city stacked upon itself all still matter to your own journey with Adam. But no matter where you've gone, no matter what choices you've made, you're still faced with nothing but the worst kinds of people in every seedy corner of the world you travel to. And Adam is tired. No, he's exhausted. When the game finally crescendos, when Adam spreads his wings and flies to the Panchaea facility, a floating Arctic research station, it serves as the thesis statement of Human Revolution. Designed as a beacon of global unity, it now emits a signal that is causing augmented people around the world to go into a crazed frenzy. Panchaea has become a tomb for humanity's arrogance. The station's collapse mirrors the game's own struggle to balance its ambition with its execution, immersing players in Panchaea's decaying grandeur. Flooded corridors, flickering holograms, and destroyed labs paint a portrait of institutional rot. Audio logs detail ethical breaches in something called the Hyron Project, a hive mind AI powered by human brains. Emails and pocket secretaries detail Illuminati operatives' conversations where they debate acceptable losses, showing their willingness to sacrifice thousands for control. Once pristine, white architecture now cracked and stained. This utopia was never more than a facade. It's here that you're presented with a choice. Panchaea is going down into the ICC below, that's a guarantee, but you can decide what message gets broadcast to the world before it does. Depending on some of your choices across the rest of the game and earlier in this level, you may be limited in what options you have here. But ideally, you'll see 3 buttons laid out in front of you. If you choose to lie to the world, there's 2 ways you can go about it. Or you could tell them the truth of what actually happened here. Or do you make a 4th kind of choice? One where you don't send out a message at all. After all, is it really your decision to make? Should one person have that kind of control over humanity? Should Adam let them come to their own conclusions, make their own choices, and sit with their actions when they're done? At launch, one major gripe with Human Revolution was these endings, that they felt rushed. And according to the developers, they were. But honestly, I feel like they still fit here, giving players and Adam a chance to reflect back on the journey they've taken, and to also look forward towards the horizon at what might come next. The success of Human Revolution set an impossibly high bar for its sequel, Mankind Divided. Tasked with expanding Jensen's story, Eidos Montreal faced mounting pressure from publisher Square Enix to deliver yet another blockbuster. The result was a game torn apart by competing priorities. The narrative framed augmented humans as oppressed minorities. However, it was a story that was wholly undermined by corporate mandates, including a very controversial Augment Your Pre-Order campaign, and microtransactions for in-game praxis kits. Players were warranted to balk at such intrusions, with Eurogamer even criticizing the sequel as a quote-unquote capitalist experiment grafted onto a story about systemic oppression. The game's singular hub, while visually stunning, made the game feel smaller and less dynamic overall. Even Michael McCann's score, while still technically proficient, just recycled motifs from Human Revolution without the same thematic depth. By 2017, Square Enix admitted that Mankind Divided sales were subpar, and plans for a concluding sequel were shelved indefinitely. At the time of writing, there's still no word on if or when we could ever see the final part of Adam Jensen's story. Human Revolution's legacy is one of duality. It proved that a cult classic could evolve into a mainstream triumph, yet its very success destabilized the franchise. The game's ambition to marry old-school immersive sim depth with AAA polish became its Achilles heel. Like Icarus, it soared high enough to inspire awe, but left its successor with nowhere to go but down. Yet Human Revolution's flaws are inseparable from what makes it so great. The outsourced boss fights and rushed endings are reminders that even flawed masterpieces can reshape the industry. Its story of hubris and redemption, both on-screen and behind the scenes, serves as a metaphor for game development itself. A precarious balance between art and commerce, innovation and tradition. The game's brilliance lies not in perfection, but in its audacity to address the topics of humanity, power, and the cost of progress. Though Mankind Divided faltered, it's a testament to Human Revolution's impact that fans still clamor for Jensen's story to conclude. In an era where live service models and homogenized design are the standard, Deus Ex stands as a beacon of what games can achieve when they dare to fly too close to the sun. And in doing so, Human Revolution leaves us with one final choice. Do we sit here and mourn the melted wings? Or do we marvel that they flew at all?